and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and secretly dead child psychologist, Matt Freeman. Matt, how's it going?
Hi there, Scott. Sorry I missed our meeting.
Well, that's okay, Matt. You're just having trouble keeping track of time these days. I can't talk today. Jeez, not a good start.
It's okay. It's very naturalistic. Just go with it.
Yeah, there we go. This week on the show, we are beginning a new Deconstructing Director series with one of my favorite directors of all time, Mr. M. Night Shyamalan. I'm very excited about this, Matt.
Me too. I think that you and I have been Shyamalan apologists for some time now.
Yes, but I don't like that term because I don't like implying that there is something to apologize for.
I agree. And yeah, so this is our another journey is beginning in our Deconstructing Director series.
Yeah, over the next few months, years, we're going to spend at least one episode a month diving deep into the filmography of Shyamalan in an attempt to understand him as a director, kind of what his central thesis is, how his style has morphed and changed as his career has gone on, just all those fun things to kind of leave this thing feeling like we have a really, really good understanding of this director that we both happen to really like.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of movies of his that I adore, some of which are movies that are not actually that popular, but I love them anyway. And then there's some weird ones in here.
Yeah. The only one of these movies that I have not seen is The Last Airbender. So that's one of the things that I've said, no, actually, all you guys are wrong. Shyamalan is actually a really good director. And then everyone says, well, what about The Last Airbender? And I'm like, well, I haven't seen that, so it doesn't count. And that will remain true until about 8 episodes from now.
Yeah, I feel like by then we will have some explanation for how that happened, because
that's kind of what I'm hoping.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't want to get into that right now, but I've watched like the first 15 minutes of it, and it is really remarkable how bad it is. So I'm sure there's some reason. There's got to be some reason why that happened.
Yeah. So I think there are 11 films that we're doing on this marathon, which is a lot, but I think each of them are worth looking at. We're starting today with The Sixth Sense, and we're moving all the way through to his latest, Glass, which I think we're predicting that by the time we get to Glass, that will be a movie that is available on home video. So we'll both be able to watch that again without having to go to a theater, because I think it's probably already gone now.
Yeah, I think it probably is.
And do we want to read them out, or do we need to do that?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and read out the films that we're going to be covering.
Sure.
So we've got The Sixth Sense today, Unbreakable, Signs, The Village, Lady in the Water, The Happening, The Last Airbender, After Earth, The Visit, Split, and Glass.
Oh, it's a very eclectic, interesting mix of movies there.
It really is. And is it correct to say most of these he also wrote?
Yes.
In fact, the vast majority of these he also wrote.
I think the only one on this particular list that he did not write are After Earth just After Earth. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's it. Because there are movies that he's written but not directed. Like I think Devil was the elevator one, was one of those.
Okay.
But yeah, we're only doing his directed movies. But yeah, I think the only one of these he did not write, is After Earth. So
all right.
We'll have a good understanding of him as a writer too by the end of this thing.
Which is definitely something that I'm not going to be able to avoid talking about consistently, because it's so much of what I love about the movies is the story.
Yeah.
So he's responsible for
both. Yeah. And I think that's all we're doing today. All we're doing today is talking about The Sixth Sense. We have no other segments, nothing else planned, because I think we're going to have a lot to say about this movie, because I love it so much. The Sixth Sense is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love it to death. Not only do I love this movie, I love talking about this movie. I just did a podcast with one of our old Doof friends, Adrian. He has his own show about horror movies, and he invited me on to talk about The Sixth Sense because he knows how much I love it. And I'm not at all tired about talking about this movie yet. So I think we're going to have a lot to say here.
I agree. I hadn't seen this movie in years, and I watched it last night, and I was really kind of expecting, like, okay, this is like an old movie. My opinion on Shyamalan has changed over time. I still love him. I still love most of his movies, but I was ready to find fault with the movie, and I did it. Every time I see something after a long break, I do have a different take on it, but it was still just an amazingly good movie, amazingly well made.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I guess we should say up front here, spoilers.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anyone on the planet that does not know the end of this movie yet, but we should say it. Spoilers. We will be talking about this movie in its entirety. If you have not seen it, oh my gosh, go do that right now. It's on Netflix right now. Go watch The Sixth Sense and come back and listen to us talk about it, because we're going to say some things. All right, let's get into it. Let's talk all about M. Night Shyamalan's first sort of directorial feature, The Sixth Sense.
Yeah, first widely successful one anyway.
There you go.
You know the accident up there?
Yeah.
Someone got hurt.
They did?
A lady. She broke her neck.
Oh my God, but you can see her?
Yes.
Where is she?
Standing next to my window.
Baby, what are you shaking? Cole, what's wrong?
Did you ever talk to your mom about how things are?
I don't tell her things.
Why not?
Because she doesn't look at me like everybody else, and I don't want her to. I don't want her to know.
Know what?
I see dead people walking around like regular people.
I don't see anything. Are you sure they're there?
Sometimes you feel it inside, like you're falling down real fast. You ever feel the prickly things on the back of your neck?
Yes.
That's them.
So, yeah, this is a story of a boy who communicates with spirits and seeks the help of a disheartened child psychologist.
Yes, that is accurate.
Sort of. It's
very,
Good
very
enough.
high level. Yeah.
It's the best you can do without spoilers, right?
Yeah. So this is a tough one. And by tough, I mean, I don't know where to start, because I want to talk about everything.
Yeah.
But I guess the one thing we should do is kind of just like our overall, like, why this movie works, right? Just like a high level, and then we can dive into the detail of it.
Sure.
I think one of the things that we're going to be talking about a lot over the course of this whole deconstructing series is the concept of twists, because that's an M. Night Shyamalan thing, right? That's out of anything in all of his films and in all of his career, the thing he's known for is the Shyamalan twist. So we are going to spend a lot of time on his movies that have twists, because I don't think all of them do. I think sometimes things that are called a twist in his movies are just like late reveals that don't really fall under what a twist is. But it is kind of important to understand, you know, in his movies that are really, really good, that have twists, why they work, and his movies that are not so good, what may be wrong with the central twist.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think this is probably the movie that has the most important twist anyway, because it's ultimately the ending of the movie changes the context of everything that's happened in the movie.
Right. Which is, in my opinion, what a twist should do.
Yeah.
A twist should not just be a reveal and you're like, oh, that happened. The twist should recontextualize every bit of film that you've seen up until the reveal of the twist. If it doesn't do that, in my opinion, it's not functioning well. Like it's just there for its own sake. It's not there for any kind of reason in the film.
Yeah, right.
And in Sixth Sense, I think that's exactly what happens. I think the twist in this movie is beautiful. And one of the reasons why I think you know that is because rewatching this movie becomes an exercise in seeing the things that were right in front of your eyes that you didn't see.
Yeah. Right. Because, and we spent a lot of today talking about this, actually, how many details there are. And I guess for me, this is something that I want to talk about specifically in this conversation, because we're talking about directing. And these are clearly the kinds of decisions that he was making, where there are so many things where the details of how he executes it on film are actually the thing that makes it work.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm gonna open up with this one because it's something that I actually noticed that I don't think I'd ever seen pointed out before, was that every time you see the shot of the door handle to the basement, it's at a weird angle where he's approaching the door from kind of like this very acute angle, and he pulls on the handle and he can't open it, and the handle is at the bottom of the frame, and then finally this happens 2 or 3 times,
Yeah.
at least twice, and finally in the last bit when it shows the door handle in the same orientation that shot has always been, and then the camera pulls back and reveals that the table is there blocking the door.
Yeah.
And the revelation was that table has either always been there or may as well have always been there in every shot. Like it's not like they just said it's not like the table wasn't there and then for that shot they put the table there, and the lesson is Bruce Willis wasn't seeing the table. The lesson is the table was always there and the camera wasn't showing it and you weren't noticing it. And
Right.
And it may seem like a minor thing to make a big deal of, but this is kind of representative of the way he does things overall, where the camera is actually not lying to you at any point.
I completely agree, and I think that the level of detail there is great because it's also not necessary, right? Like there's no reason you had to construct the shot that way. You can make an argument in the film, like Haley Joel Osment's argument is dead people see what they want to see. So you could just make an argument that he just didn't see the table, but that's not enough for Shyamalan. He wants it to be right there. He wants to put the thing right in front of you, but just out of frame. He wants to play off your assumptions. I love that scene in particular because it is 3 times. It's a nice little 3-beat in the movie. But both of the other times, you see him walk up to the door, you see him jiggle the handle and find the door locked, and then you see him reach into his pockets looking for a key. And then we cut to inside the basement where he's gone beyond the door. And the assumption that you, a smart person who's watched movies before, is that, okay, we've cut to him. He in between the cut, he took out the key, he put the key in the door, he turned the door, he walked through the door, and he sat down in his chair in the basement. And that's the assumption you make. And the movie knows that is the assumption you make, and it plays off of the fact that human beings inherently understand film language because we watch so many movies. It plays off of that to trick you without ever lying to you.
Yeah, absolutely. You were pointing out to me earlier today. Shit, now it's escaped me. What was it that we were talking about?
There's the dinner scene. I think the anniversary scene at the dinner.
Yeah, that's definitely another one. You were telling me about the Oneers, or you were pointing out the Oneers and how they were like. I noticed a couple of them. Yeah. But this movie is very fond of its one shot takes. Yeah. But it's not like so many movies do that, and it's just like, okay, yeah, that's impressive, and it definitely kind of like it immerses you in the scene when a director does that. But in this particular movie, it's more than that. It's that it's like a magic trick. It's like a magic trick where your attention is actually being manipulated by the fact that it's a oneer. Right. Like we were talking about the scene where the mom is in the kitchen and Haley Joel Osment is sitting at the table, and she leaves the room for like 5 seconds. The camera follows her. She goes back into the room. The camera follows her, and all of the drawers and cabinets are open, and it's actually startling to you. Yeah. And that's kind of amazing because there's nothing startling about seeing a bunch of drawers and cabinets open. Like that's not a frightening thing, but you like I said, it's a magic trick where you know that those shouldn't be open because you followed her into the other room and then you followed her back. So your brain is in the same state that the character's brain is in, basically, where you're like, those were closed. That's startling. Yeah. And it works so well, and it's so like almost every shot in this movie is like thought out on the level of how is this affecting the viewer's like state of beliefs about what's happening.
Yeah, I mean it is so true that like a lot of a lot of directors just throw oneers into their films because they're cool, right? Like it's just like, this is a look at this cool thing I can do, and it makes filmmaking harder. But yeah, I think every one of them has purpose here, and it's exactly as you said. If that scene had just been shot and cut normally, I don't think it would have had an effect, because there's something inherently like revealing about that you cut to open drawers, right? Like even though we understand the language of cinema, there's still something that's like, oh, they just cut to a scene where the drawers were open. Like you don't follow the passage of time as well as when the camera just swings one way to see her walk into a room. She grabs a tie for her son, and then the camera swings back to follow her back into the room, and everything has changed, and it's not enough time. Like, I mean, I'm sure they literally had crew people like rushing onto the set while the camera was looking the other way to open all the drawers really fast.
Right.
And the way the scene is framed is so great too, because the camera like sweeps back in and follows her back in, and Haley Joel Osment as Cole is just sitting there on the table, or sitting there at the table, and both his hands are like flat on the table, like fingers spread. Like it's clear he's terrified, but it also is very clear that like there's no possible way he could have done it.
Right.
And that's one of the really wonderful things I like throughout this movie, is not only that attention to detail, but it's setting up this thing where Toni Collette's character as Cole's mother, like she never fully gets what's going on, right? Like there's always a logical explanation, but the movie like continues to push up against her boundaries of like, what is happening? And I love that it plays with that.
Yeah. And even from that, relatively early scene, it establishes this dynamic between them where her love of him is never in question, and yet she's continually put in these situations of like basically just like faced with how much of a difficulty he poses to her life, right? Like that, and that's and he's aware of this, and that's what makes it like heart-wrenching as the movie goes on, is the scenes where, like that scene where the first thing he says, he's like, I was looking for the Pop-Tarts.
Yeah.
And like trying to play it off, and like unsuccessfully trying to play it off. We're going to talk about Haley Joel Osment in a minute. And then when she reacts like, oh, okay, he's like, what are you thinking, Mommy? Are you thinking something bad about me? And that's the thing that undergirds the whole storyline between them, is as scared as he is about the ghosts, he's like more scared that his mom is going to stop loving him because he's different like this. And
I completely agree. The emotional through line of the whole film is that line, "What are you thinking, Mama?"
Yeah.
And her response of, "Look at my face."
Yeah.
Like, do I look like this constant, as crazy as things get in this movie, this constant amount of reassuring, loving attitude from his mother. I love it so much. And people say that Shyamalan's writing is a little like cold and inhuman at times, but I look at this relationship between Cole and his mother, and I'm like, no way. This is a beautiful human. Like they're both suffering. Like the whole Bumblebee pendant speech later in the movie is beautiful and tragic. And like I want to talk about that whole scene for like 20 minutes, because the stuff that Shyamalan is doing with the camera in that scene is brilliant too. It's just every scene has purpose. Every camera movement matters. Like, this is cut and edited and staged beautifully across the board. Like detail. You can sit and study a frame of this movie. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I love this movie so much.
Yeah. I mean, I also want to talk about exactly the Bumblebee pendant conversation, but I think a way to get into that might be to talk about the performances for a second.
Sure.
And not just to say, oh my God, these are amazing performances, because they're some of the most amazing performances I've ever seen, especially from a child actor. A child actor who's basically doing a role where every scene he's playing can be interpreted two completely different ways, and he has to act such that you can make both of those interpretations. But we're talking about Shyamalan as a director, and I think that's the thing to talk about, is like, he wrote this dialogue. Mm-hmm. He directed these actors how to perform this dialogue. So surely he deserves some measure of credit for this working out as well as it does, right?
I 100%. I absolutely think that. And I mean, that is like just from a high level, the reason why the twist works is because every line that Haley Joel Osment gives in this movie has two entirely independent meanings up until a certain point in the film, at least. But
Yeah.
like if we're just talking from the very beginning scene where they meet them, like he's Bruce Willis is sitting across a street from his house, from Haley Joel Osment's apartment. The kid leaves the apartment, puts on his glasses, and then like takes off running. And you're immediately like, well, why is he running? And it's because the ghost is following him. Like it's because Bruce Willis is following him. He runs into a church. You pointed out when we were talking earlier that like religious symbols are obviously a place where he feels the most safe. Like we see later, his tent is like decked in Jesus statues. Like there's like, and it's very like, it's a very accurate child approach to this problem, right? Like ghosts are following me. I don't know what to do. Everyone says that God and Jesus are powerful and will keep away the bad things. So I'm just going to steal or take as many of these statues as I can. And the more of them there are, the safer I'll be.
Right. So he's hiding in this church, and it was interesting because on this viewing, I was thinking like he actually is safe in churches usually. And the fact that Bruce Willis is able to enter the church means like, oh, maybe I should trust this guy.
Yeah.
That feels a little bit maybe more like literal than is necessary to say, but it was just something that popped in my head on this viewing.
Yeah. Well, and Bruce Willis approaches him, and he's got this very unsure, kind of put off and scared look, which, on second viewing is obvious because there's a ghost talking to him, and he's like, go away, ghost.
Right.
But on first viewing, like it completely plays off as this strange man who is claiming to be your psychologist and saying that you missed a meeting, is trying to get you to open up and talk to him. And there's a wonderful line at the end of the first meeting between the two of them, where Haley Joel Osment says in this very, very dejected voice, "I'm going to see you again, right?" And again, that's played perfectly to mean two different things. Like I'm stuck. You're my psychologist, right? Like you're going to keep forcing me to reveal more stuff about myself. But also, it's a realization that this ghost that's bothering him is not going to go away anytime soon.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And again, like you said, every scene that he's in, him in particular, has to be able to be interpreted as both I'm leery of talking to this psychologist and, oh Christ, there's a ghost here again.
Right.
But not just him though. Like there are scenes with Toni Collette, with his wife, actress whose name I should remember, where
Olivia Williams,
where they're acting opposite him in such a way where they have to be acting as though he is present and they're not interacting with him, and also that he's just not present.
Yeah. One of the big parts that jumped out at me about that is the scene after Cole's been shoved into the cubby hole and he gets assaulted by that ghost. It's like the first moment in the movie where we hear a ghost and actually realize, like, which is something I think we should talk about, is the fact that this movie really, if you walked into this theater knowing absolutely nothing about this movie, you would not be convinced that you are in a ghost movie until probably 40 minutes into it. The movie kind of holds very close to the chest that part of it.
Yeah. It is a pretty scary movie, but it actually confines the scariness, the actual moments of scare to really a handful of moments. The rest of it is just kind of atmospheric and creepy.
Yeah. So she's talking to the doctor, who is M. Night Shyamalan, because another thing our boy does is put himself in his movies like Hitchcock did. So M. Night Shyamalan is in every single one of his movies. So she's talking to the doctor, who is M. Night Shyamalan, and the doctor points out that Cole has bruises and scrapes on himself, and Toni Collette like gives him a look, and then we cut to Bruce Willis, who's in the room, and he just goes, "Oh man." And we cut away from him. And like, we never, like, the establishing, like, every scene has an establishing shot, that like orients you in the space. And then normally when it's having conversations, it'll cut to specific shots, like mid-range to close-up shots on faces, and it'll cut back and forth. This movie did the establishing shot without Bruce Willis in it, then starts doing the conversation, the cut back and forth between the doctor and Toni Collette. And then there's just this random cut to Bruce Willis, who's suddenly in the room saying, "Oh man." And then it cuts away from him and you don't see him. Like, he is in none of the other frames. Like, he's in no one else's frame. It's just like so clever, because like it's almost screaming at you that something's wrong here, but it's doing it in such clever ways that you just don't see what's right in front of your face. And he telegraphs this, Matt, so much, because he has Bruce Willis perform a coin trick in which the trick is the thing is right in front of your eyes the entire time. It never, like, the whole trick is that the coin never left his hand.
Right.
It's been in his hand the whole time. The whole thing is misdirection. He's making you look somewhere else when the thing is right where it was the entire time. And that's the movie. That's what the movie is doing. It's Shyamalan telling you what he's doing with this movie. But until you see it, until the reveal happens, it just goes over your head.
There's a very Shyamalan moment where Cole shows the trick to another boy, and the boy's like, "That's stupid."
Right.
It's a very meta Shyamalan moment of perhaps preempting his critics. The thing is, everyone loved this movie.
Right.
So.
Well, and the other thing, I mean, that is a very meta Shyamalan moment where he is speaking to his critics, which is not the last time we're going to see him do that. But what I also like about it is it also kind of in world, like, shows us that one of the reasons why Cole is so weird is because he's constantly learning things from ghosts and then sharing them with other people in ways that are really off-putting. Like, Cole does not talk like a normal kid, right?
Yeah.
Like, he talks differently. He talks like a person that's older than he is sometimes. And that is because he's constantly being talked to by these ghosts.
Yeah. One thing I noticed this time was clearly, like, a literal dead person told him about his teacher's stuttering when he was a kid. It's like, that's kind of weird, right? Like, just that's very specific.
Yeah, I mean, like, you wonder when that happened. Was it happening right then? Was the ghost sitting there right then saying, "Oh, this fucking guy, let me tell you something about him"?
Yeah.
Or was it months ago and he was just saving that till the person hurt him or pissed him off? Yeah, like, the implications of that, and the movie, like, doesn't have to spell that out for you, right?
Yeah.
It's just there.
You know, speaking of interesting, like, sleight of hand stuff, and maybe I, like, blinked and missed something. Maybe you can clear this up for me, actually.
Sure.
But so the former patient breaks into his house. He's shot. He falls down, and then the patient shoots himself in a way where the camera pans off the screen in a way where it's like the best shot in cinema.
Yeah.
And then it, like, fades out, and he's sitting on the bench. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no, like, title card or 6 months later card.
It says next fall. It says the next fall.
Then I'm just an idiot. But because I missed that, but I was actually paying attention. I think I was just, like, thinking about the previous scene. But anyway, it's interesting
because it's a great scene.
Because even if you don't, like, it's interesting because he's looking over his notes and it has all the same stuff on it. And there's a part of you that's thinking, like, is this that patient when he was younger? But then they very quickly in the dialogue clear up that that's not the case,
right?
Because he's talking about the award that he received.
Yeah, you're right.
So I almost feel like they wrote the screenplay, they did all that, and then people were like, "Is this supposed to be before that?" And then he was like, "God damn it!" And he put he put the title card in as a consequence.
I think you're probably right. That does seem like something that he probably would have added there, because I think one of the things he wants to do is keep time really nebulous throughout this movie. He doesn't want, because we're in Bruce Willis's point of view for the majority of this movie, and he, as stated by his character, does not have a good grasp on time. He says he keeps losing track of time. Like, he's not be able to focus. Things just kind of come and go because he's dead. So I think that he probably would have preferred not having that card in there. I bet if you asked him, yeah.
Yeah, right. There's so much that's, like, the movie feels so, like, floaty, and
it does.
I mean, it reminds me of the others, which is a similar premise actually, in the specific sense that like you're in this weird disoriented dream world almost, and at first you're just interpreting that as like that's a very interesting stylistic way of capturing a tone.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the movie you realize that everything about it that seems off is because it is off. You never see him like getting dressed. You never see him having a normal moment that isn't like him in his psychologist clothes, doing psychologist things.
He never eats. He never drinks.
Right. Because those things aren't happening.
Right. He never enters a door. He never enters a door in this entire movie. And that's another thing that the movie cheats kind of with. I mean, it's not really cheating, but it's playing your assumption against you, right? There's that scene where it cuts to Toni Collette and Bruce Willis staring at each other in chairs as Cole opens the door to go walk into the apartment. And your natural assumption as a person who understands the language of film is that they're looking at each other and we're having a conversation, and then Cole came home.
Right. Right.
But the movie never actually says that. And then the scene continues to play out. And I want to kind of talk about that scene a lot too, because I think the camera work in that scene is just like the epitome to me of how good of a director Shyamalan is. But that scene is great, and it's another great Haley Joel Osment performance, because you realize here like that the reason he's not talking is because his mom is in the other room, and he doesn't want his mom to hear him talking to nothing. Right. So like Bruce Willis is asking him questions, and he comes up with this way to play a game where Cole doesn't have to actually say anything to respond. And you see in a moment like Haley Joel Osment like looks over his shoulder, like he's looking back towards the kitchen, thinking if he wants to engage with his mom in the other room or not. It's just really subtle and really amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's I can't really get over it. Like that was one of the elements where I was expecting on this rewatch to be like, yeah, it can't be that good. And it's like, no, it's that good. Like he's a kid, and his acting, it's like some of the just most, I don't know, the scenes where he's like terrified, where there's a ghost in his house and he's running around his house, and he'll like hide behind a piece of furniture, and he's like hyperventilating and crying. It's like I like who can even do that? That's so, and like you want to like hug him, you know? Like,
right? Yeah.
That's so good.
Well, and there's really like little moments too where like he wakes up in the middle of the night and he really has to pee. Yeah. But he's like terrified. Which is such like I don't know. I did that as a kid, right? Where you wake up in the middle of the night and you have to go to the bathroom, but like your hallway is scary when it's dark. Yeah. And you like sprint down the hall as fast as you can to get to the toilet because you'll be safe in the bathroom. Right. That's such a human moment, and I love that it's in this movie. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Let's talk about the bee pendant scene before we forget. Are we? Which one? So what I wanted to talk about specifically, actually. And maybe you wanted to talk about a different element, but the scene where they're at the kitchen table, and it starts out with his mom complaining about the thermostat being broken. Yeah, and then there's the bit with like the gloves, and the gloves are like, my interpretation is that the gloves put his mom in a bad mood because they're his dad's gloves. Yeah, he continually wears his dad's clothing. Yeah, yeah, which is understandable, but his mom kind of doesn't like it. And so she's like grouchy. And the part that I wanted to talk about outside of the dialogue is what the camera is doing. Oh, yes. Thank you. I wrote all this down. I want to talk about this too. Yeah. Cause it's like, and it's like floating back and forth between both of them. It's not a wide shot where you can see both of them and what their faces are doing. It's not cutting between them. It's like literally like drifting slowly back and forth between them, and not even like based on who's talking. Right. I mean, it's slightly based on who's talking, but like sometimes one of them will talk when they're off screen, and it was so fascinating to me because I was like, what a strange way of shooting this scene. And then I visualized like, okay, what would this be like if it were just like a wide shot or like a couple of wide shots? And I was like, well, I don't think that would be better actually. And then I was visualizing like, okay, well, what if it were cutting back and forth between their faces? And I was like,
No, that's missing something that the scene actually gets from this weird drifting back and forth thing
Yeah.
that I've never seen in any other movie.
Well-
And I'm like, why is this working? It works.
It's working because it accentuates the space between them. So like the thing I love about the scene is we actually do have a wide. The scene starts with a wide with them both sitting at the kitchen table. When Cole takes off the gloves, they are both in frame. It's a wide shot of both of them. And then the minute she starts talking about the bumblebee pendant, the camera starts pulling in, and it pulls in far enough to where it can't keep them both in the frame. So then it starts switching back and forth between them. And it's this slow, and while it's switching back and forth, the camera is slowly pushing in still. So like the amount of distance the camera has to move to get to from one of them to the other one of them in the scene is longer each time because it's a little closer. And like as they're having this argument and this disagreement, it is accentuating the difference between them, the space between them, the separation between them, because there's this big thing in between them that he can't tell her. And I love it. So it's so brilliant. It's such a brilliant way of making you feel that space. And it's not even conscious. Like you said, you just said, this is working on me and I don't know why. Mm-hmm. That's why. It's making you feel the space between them without having to say anything.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, no, thanks for framing it so precisely. Yeah. There's, and that, part of it I think is like, so for example, like she asks him, tell me the truth. Did you take the pendant? And when she says that, she's off screen.
Yep.
But that creates a kind of tension because she's upset, but you can't see her face. So you don't quite know how upset she is. And you see his face and you see that he's like scared and sad and upset. But you also like understand like he's not gonna lie, even if it would benefit him. He's not gonna lie to his mom. Like that's a line that he just doesn't seem to want to cross.
It's wonderful, right? It's a great character moment because it's like he could have just said, yeah, I did, and the situation would have been distilled.
Right.
But he can't bring himself to do that.
Right. And
he didn't take it.
Exactly. And he shakes his head and you don't see her immediate reaction. I think
you hear it. You hear her noise she makes.
You hear a noise like you hear what may be her like slamming down a utensil or something.
Yeah.
And again that creates tension. It creates a tension that wouldn't be there if you just saw what she did. And it's so interesting because I don't think I've ever seen that exact way of shooting a dialogue scene ever before. And it's like it's just perfect. It's like this is the kind of thing that makes me think like, yeah, this director is an actual genius.
Yeah, and through that whole thing, like they're never in frame together at the same time until she dismisses him from the table because she says, "You're done with your roast beef. Get out of here!" And then yells, and then he walks across the frame behind her. He like walks into the frame and then leaves it immediately, and they're not in a frame together again until he comes to her and where they have the second beat of the look at my face beat where he comes and says, "Mother, if it's not terribly inconvenient, may I sleep with you tonight?"
Yeah. Right.
Or if you're not too terribly angry with me.
Yeah. If you're not, yeah, right. That is another like a strange way of talking.
Right. Yeah. It's a dated way of talking, right? It's an old way of talking. And that's kind of a good segue to, I love that this movie is set in Philadelphia. Shyamalan is like a Philadelphia guy. Like his production company is based in Philadelphia. Every single one of his movies that can be set in Philadelphia is set in Philadelphia. So he really loves the town. But it's just a perfect place for this ghost story. And even the dialogue in the movie says it, like, this is one of the oldest cities in the world. Every single one of these buildings has history. People have lived and died in every single one of these buildings, the movie says. And so not only is he having to deal with this constantly, he's living in a place where so many violent deaths, right? It's an old city. A lot of bad things happened here. It's just a perfect setting. And it's also like, it allows for kind of the eeriness, it's kind of lit like a Marvel movie, Matt, where it's just kind of drab and overcast and blah the whole time.
Yeah. That's I was trying to like articulate like the way it's shot in that sense, like the way it's color graded, I guess. Yeah. The way it's color graded strikes me as very like, it kind of dates it actually. I feel like everything back in the 90s was color graded in this particular way, of everything being kind of washed out and dark. I know that's a huge generalization that isn't true at all to say everything was, but like that's almost the first thing I noticed about the movie is I was like, oh, this color grading is not the way it's done anymore these days.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
All right. We've got to talk about the big scene, Matt. We've got to talk about the most important and memeified scene in this entire movie, which is I see dead people.
Okay.
Because I think actually this scene is one of the reasons why I think the movie works as well as it does. And I think it's highlighting both of the actors' performances. Because I actually think like you get so used to seeing that scene like parodied and joked off and played off of that you forget that it's actually just really, really good. Like,
yeah.
I think it's hard to think of the phrase "I see dead people" and not like think of it as a joke these days because it's just been so overdone everywhere. But then you go watch the actual movie and you see the scene in the movie and it's like, oh, this is incredible.
Yeah. Because you're so invested in Cole at this point, and you understand how and why he would be so scared of telling anyone his secret, because he is completely aware of the fact that it will make everyone think that he's crazy or that something's terribly wrong with him.
Yeah.
And so he's terrified even as he's telling the psychologist this. I don't remember his name, but it doesn't matter.
Malcolm Crowe.
Malcolm. Yeah. Bruce Willis.
Yeah, but
and yeah.
Go ahead.
And I think another thing to talk about there is like Bruce Willis's performance in this movie is very subtle and like he's like everything is very downplayed, and like you can sense like the sadness and the regret, but also he's trying to be cheerful for the boys' sake, but also the sadness is still present, and that's one scene where you can see it's some really good acting for Bruce Willis, where he is trying to convey, he is trying to be there for the boy while under the surface being like, holy shit, like this is much worse than I thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I really love how we lead up to that moment, right? Because I think the movie does a really good job of making you understand why Cole finally feels comfortable telling the story to him. Or the truth to him, because Bruce Willis tells the story, right? Like this is the moment where first he starts telling a really terrible story. he's awful at storytelling, which is interesting because as a child psychologist, you think he would be a little better at storytelling. But he's like, there was a prince and he's in a car and they're just driving and they go to sleep and then they drive some more.
Yeah.
Which is great because then Cole says, no, for it to be a good story, you got to put some twists in it, which is, again, M. Night Shyamalan yelling at the audience. But then he starts telling the story of himself, how like he's telling why he's doing this, why he's here. I failed this other child. I have deep guilt about it, and you remind me so much of him, so I want to help you. This time I can make up for it. And it's finally in this moment when Cole finally, like he I think he already trusts him to a certain level, but this is the moment where he finally says to himself, okay, like I think I can do it. And you're right. Like Bruce Willis' reaction is like the kind, sympathetic person, but he's clearly reeling from this information. And then, I mean, from here, we almost cut immediately to a scene of him like speaking into a recording device where he's just like, oh my God, this is much worse than I thought. What am I going to do? He kind of, at this point, transitions to trying to kind of like pass Cole off on someone else because he can't deal with it.
Yeah.
And there's a line where Cole says, "Don't fail me."
Yeah.
Which is exactly what Vincent said to him. Like it's really clever that like it matches the dialogue almost exactly, which is what makes him kind of turn back.
Yeah. And it's good screenwriting because between Cole telling the secret and him coming back to Cole is when he, believes that he has discovered his wife falling in love with another man,
Right.
which is also a scene that is shot and framed in the most amazing way, because you don't see him seeing it, you don't see him breaking the window, you just see him walking away from the broken window.
Yeah. And he's also he's clutching at his stomach area as he
Oh,
walks
is he?
away, Matt. I don't know if you noticed
No,
that.
I didn't.
He is. He's clutching right where the bullet shot him.
Oh.
I paused it because I was like, this is the first time I noticed it because I paused it and was like, huh. And I rewound it and watched it again. And yeah, he's got his hand at his side right where the bullet entered him.
So good.
Yeah.
But yeah, the screenwriting point I was making was that it's basically like at the worst possible time, his quote unquote personal life is intruding to make it harder for him to because when he comes back to Cole, the reason that he gives for leaving is that his own family is falling apart.
Right.
And that's just great. It's just great screenwriting to tie those things together. Because like there could be a version of this movie where you don't have the wife character. Like that's just not a thing in the story. And think how much like lesser the movie would be without that.
It's so important to it because I mean that's the kind of establishing shot of this movie is his wife. This wonderful shot where it's a camera on the award. And their faces are reflected in it as she's reading it, so we can understand. Like it's setting, and she's saying to him, "This is important. You put this over everything, including your wife. This is important that you're being recognized for it." And it's this like easy way of establishing that like she's not like she's definitely resentful of it in a certain way, but not to the point. Like it does a great job of establishing like, in universe why she would be ignoring him and constantly seems pissed off when actually it's just depressed and that kind of stuff. But it is the most important, like the most important part of the movie for him. The thing that gets it so he can finally leave is not just helping Cole, right? He doesn't move on after he helped Cole. He doesn't move on after he makes up for his the guilt of his mistake with Vincent. The thing that finally gets him to say, "I can leave now," is when he sits down and tells his wife, "You were never second. I love you." The first time he said "I love you" to his wife, the whole movie is at the very end of it, and this allowing her to understand that he regrets the stuff he did and does love her. I think that's so important to the movie.
Yeah, and it gives her that closure. And I mean, he's literally haunting her. Like that's
right.
The exact that's exactly what's happening. He's haunting her, and that's why she can't move on. And this has as much to do with him accepting what's happened and moving on, and thus she can move on. And it's a healing for everyone. Like that's the scene with Cole and his mom is healing, and now Malcolm and his wife, it's healing. And
can we talk about the scene with Cole and his mom?
Yeah, I mean that's the
scene that makes me cry every time I watch this movie.
Yeah, it made me cry last night. I was like, I know exactly what happens in this movie. I know everything that happens in this movie, and it's still just absolutely heart-wrenching. And I mean, I think again, it's a perfect combination of the screenwriting and the performances. Yeah, where that conversation, like you could just study the back and forth of it and what is said and how it ties into the setups and what we understand about these characters and what they're feeling, being tied to what they've said before and even repeating certain statements. And then just incredibly good delivery, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, the way Haley Joel Osment says every day, the line read of every day, it's like you asked her a question. She says, "Every day." What did you ask her, Mama? Like it's perfect. It is perfect. Like it has all the pathos you need in the line coming from someone who in the world doesn't even understand what he's answering, but like it's almost as if he's mimicking
the tone,
the way his grandmother said it, because he most certainly is, right. And it's just I love it. I love it so much, and it is this wonderful moment of healing, and it's this payoff of this through line of the entire movie, which is Toni Collette's character, who I think is like the unsung hero of this movie. I say that I think she got nominated for a Supporting Actress Academy Award, so maybe not quite unsung, but the emotional resonance of her throughout this movie is so key because she's this woman who is at the end of her rope, right? She doesn't know what to do anymore. She says it herself. I'm tired. I'm tired of my body. I'm tired of my mind. I'm tired of my heart. Like, she doesn't know what to do anymore. She knows something is wrong with her son, but she cannot explain it. And she knows, like, somewhere in her mind, I think she recognizes that it's something beyond explanation. Because, like, we have the little moments in the story that I love where it's like she sees the pictures with a little weird, ominous piece of light in each one of them. Like, there's a ghost hovering around Cole constantly.
Yeah.
We have the free association writing she sees on his desk. The moment where he was locked in the little dungeon area, and she's yelling at the doctor, like, something physically happened to my son today. What is happening? What is going on? And she just doesn't get it. So it's this moment where it's finally this reconciliation. Finally, the scene where two of them are not in the same shot at the same time. Every shot in the scene is them they're both in the same shot. It's a wide, and then it goes from over the shoulders. And so they're both always in the scene at the same time, and that's how you visually telegraph reconciliation. A bond is forming between these two characters. I love it.
Yeah. It's so good, so good. There was I don't know why I gotta get this out of my head. Maybe this is one of those things where you can explain to me why I care about it, because I can't figure it out. But it's like the smallest thing. Almost feels silly mentioning it, but it's like before Cole is going to go into the little girl's bedroom, the ghost girl's bedroom, he's like, he says to Malcolm, "Don't go home," and Bruce Willis says, he says, "I definitely won't."
Yeah.
And there's something about before he said that, there's like a pause, and I was like mentally like filling it in with like, it's Bruce Willis. He's going to say like, "I'm not going anywhere" or something.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like a badass way of phrasing it. But he says, "I definitely won't," which is like, and he says it in this like small voice as if he's like he's almost like minimizing his presence in the scene and letting Cole kind of be the lead for the scene, you know?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, he is. I think that's literally what's happening.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I guess maybe that's what catches my attention about it is big actor Bruce Willis is like trying to be invisible in the scene, and it's just a line that's written to almost be like to just disappear into the background.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think you're right. I mean, I think that's a good point too, because I think Bruce Willis, Matt, he had to make this movie. And I think I wonder if he had more control, if he would have been as willing to step back. And I don't want to put anything, like, I don't want to accuse Bruce Willis of anything, but I know he has had some contentious sets before. So, but he backed out of another movie at the last minute, and part of their like reconciliation agreement was he had to make 2 movies, and this was one of the 2 movies he had to make. So that, which is why a brand new director like M. Night Shyamalan got Bruce freaking Willis in his movie. But yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's true to him throughout the movie. Is his like he steps back, like that entire scene is run by Haley Joel, and it's his moment. Like, even when he goes into the bedroom, despite Bruce Willis saying, "I'm definitely not going anywhere," he's not in the bedroom. He's not in the shot.
Yeah.
He's not there.
He lets him go in by himself, and like you said, when then Cole goes back downstairs with the box, and like the camera is focused entirely on his face as he's trying to talk to the dad and not showing the dad's reaction at all.
Right.
Like there's lots of stuff in this movie actually where you're not seeing half of a conversation. You're not seeing people's reactions. You're getting information about their reaction from how the person that the camera is looking at is responding to their reaction.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
And I think Shyamalan does that a lot. One of the things I really want to talk about, and I think the reason why we're talking so much about camera setups and frames and movements is because it's something that I've always really loved about Shyamalan, but it's something I felt was different in Glass, and it'd been so long since I had seen some of the other movies that I couldn't put my finger on like what the difference was. But I really want to pay attention to that and see if how he does this changes over time. See how he uses his camera, if it becomes more traditional camera filming, or if the Shyamalan style stays. So I want to make sure we pay especially close attention to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I can literally off the top of my head think of scenes in Signs, The Village, and Lady in the Water where one party in a conversation is not the camera never looks at them.
Yeah.
And I can't think of examples in the other movies because I haven't seen them 100 times. But yeah,
I mean, that is a very interesting way of kind of telegraphing to the audience who the important member of the scene is. Like, seeing the father's reaction to this is not important in the moment. Like, this is Cole's moment. It is for him. So we get to see his face as he approaches.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, just thinking about it, that line, "Don't go home," is a really interesting one when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, if Bruce Willis was a real live child psychologist traveling a far distance with this little kid, he's just gonna leave him there?
I think that's another bit where the movie tips its hand, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no way an actual man would just abandon the child there.
Right.
But he's like, hey, ghosts, don't disappear.
Yeah, because I know you just randomly disappear sometimes, ghosts. Don't do that this time. I need you here.
Right.
Yeah, it's great. And it's a thing like, it's just now occurring to me as we're talking. So it's a thing that, like, when you're watching it the first time, your brain might, like, for a second go, wait, what? Hold on.
Yeah.
But not, like, long enough to actually, like, reveal anything.
Yeah, I mean, like, this time I was like, oh, he's on this bus by himself. He's taking this, like, long distance bus ride by himself.
Right.
There is no actual chaperone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm sure his mom will love that.
Right. Oh, it's so good.
We haven't talked about the color red, and I think that's because I feel like that's what everyone talks about when they talk about this movie. One of the most obvious, like, color uses in this movie is whenever stuff's around dead things, it's red, right?
Yeah. The doorknob.
The doorknob, the rose at
mother.
the anniversary. The mother is wearing red at a funeral, which is weird.
Yeah.
His wife is wearing red at their anniversary. That balloon that floats up to the ceiling where the ghost is, that pops right when the ghost attacks him. It's throughout the movie, and it's very clever. Like, it's, again, him kind of tipping his hand. Like, look, everything's right in front of you. Like, it's a classic misdirection. The penny's been here the whole time. Look, it's red.
Yeah.
Look, it's right there. But you don't see it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I guess I don't have anything to add about it other than, like, yeah, it's a cool element. And once it's pointed out, it's fun to pay attention to.
Yeah. And there's other, like, there's thing we can talk about how the movie cheats but doesn't cheat. Like, when Bruce Willis sits down in the anniversary scene, when he sits down across from his wife. Actually, yeah, I wanted to talk about this with you because this is, I think, a really clever way in which I noticed two elements of sound design that were really wonderful in the movie. But the first thing I want to just say is that the movie, like, has set Bruce Willis's chair up to cheat out already. So, like, he doesn't have to move the chair to sit into it. He just kind of slides into it, which is just a really little clever bit of set design that I just think shows the detail of the movie. But there's two sound elements in the scene that I really liked. We haven't talked about sound much. We didn't talk about we don't talk about score a lot on this podcast because I don't really know that much about music. But the sound design here is really great because there's two distinct moments I want to talk about. This whole dinner scene, by the way, is another oneer. The camera does not cut the entire time, and I think it moves back and forth. It's very similar to the Cole and his mom scene, I think, where the camera kind of moves back and forth between them. I think they're in the scene more than together than in that scene. But and there's this moment when Malcolm reaches for the bill, when the bill comes and she kind of grabs it before he can get his hand on it, that there's this very, like, obviously added in post, like, whooshing noise, like this whoosh, like this mysterious, like, whoosh, and it, like, really jumped out at me this time. I was like, it's really otherworldly in, like, a very obvious way, and I was like, whoa, I did not expect that.
Yeah, I don't think I noticed that, and I want to go back and just do that again. But it's one of those things like the Darth Vader choking sound being accompanied by a low rumble where no one
Right.
consciously notices it, but it's totally having an effect.
Yeah, I think it like subconsciously like makes you more aware of the significance of that moment.
Yeah, it is underscoring the moment, but you're what's happening in the actual on the screen is distracting you from noticing consciously what the sound is doing. Yeah.
Right. And there's another moment in this of sound design that I really love, because there's a moment in the scene where his wife looks up and has this annoyed look on her face, and then says "Happy anniversary, Malcolm" in kind of like a sad, pissed off way, and then walks away. And in your assumption in that moment is she's mad because he's late. He also walks in late to his anniversary dinner and starts talking all about work. Right. Like that's the first thing he does, is he's like really fixated on Cole. And what I like about this is, in this scene, the more he focuses on Cole in the scene, the closer it zooms in on him and kind of cuts her out of frame, almost as if the more absorbed he gets with his own work, like the less room he has for her. It's another great visual design. But anyway, so she looks up, and we're meant to assume she's pissed off, and then leaves. And obviously she was not looking at him because he's not there. But what I realized in watching it this time, and I think it's only because I had headphones on, right about the time she looks up, there's this like really obnoxious lady in the background laughing, and my headphones are stereo, so it was picked up in my left ear, and it was kind of like zonally right past where Bruce Willis was sitting. So what's happening in that scene is his wife is looking up at the laughing people and kind of annoyed at this laughing happy person because she's miserable. And so the movie built in reason for why she just happened to look up at that moment. Even though like you didn't need that, right? Like sometimes people just look forward. Like you didn't need that moment. The movie would not have been ruined if you were like, why did she look up at moment at 45 minutes and 3 seconds if he wasn't there? But it's so... the attention to detail in this film is so high that it even builds in an in-world reason for that quick glance up to happen.
Yeah. I was just going to say the attention to detail overall is so stunning that any given scene, like literally any scene, you will notice all of the careful things that are being done.
Yeah.
To make it work subconsciously. Like that's, I guess that's the main thing that I take away from this conversation actually is like Shyamalan is actually thinking on the level of I'm basically doing a magic trick. Like a film is a magic trick, and just like a magician will like plan what they're going to be doing with their left hand such that it captures your attention while they're doing the trick with their right. Everything he's doing in the film is capturing your attention with one thing, making you focus on one thing while two other things are happening simultaneously in the scene that you're not consciously paying attention to, but they are registering with you subconsciously.
Yeah. And
I mean, we basically opened up the conversation talking about like the table blocking the door. That's like first of all, it's a 3-beat, but like the thing about 3 beats is that it's you're priming the person to anticipate something on a subconscious level. They're just like, oh yeah, the door's going to be locked again. No, the door's not locked. There's a table in front of the door. What? But like you weren't thinking about that. That right. is the point. So. Like you weren't wondering why is the door always locked? Oh, you're thinking like, oh, it's locked because his wife keeps locking it because whatever.
Well, you know what I love about it though? I think the reveal that there's a table there covering the door, in my mind, says she kept finding this fucking door open. Like how long was Bruce Willis' ghost haunting her before this movie starts, where he's just continually going down into the basement, right? And then so finally she just like, I gotta put a fucking thing over this door because the door keeps being opened or something.
Yeah. I mean so my take was she never wants to go into the basement anymore because maybe first of all, like he's super haunting the basement, or also just like that was his study and it reminds reminds her of him.
I think it's a little both. I
yeah.
mean, we also see like the movie opens with her down in the basement and she
Yeah.
gets a chill and walks up. So like the implication there is that there's another ghost in the basement already.
Right.
There's fucking ghosts everywhere in the city. The basement was already a place she was uncomfortable, and now it's attached to his memories. And yes, he is also literally haunting it constantly as well.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know. I could literally just pick any scene in this movie and be like, hey, talk about how that was perfect. Like when they find the intruder in their house, it's just like, that's perfect. It's done.
Well,
They're having a nice time. They're having like kind of a goofy, like husband and wife, goofy romantic moment.
Yeah, they're a little drunk.
They're drunk. They're being like silly on purpose, and then it suddenly gets very. I don't know. It's always impressive when a movie is able to convey emotions. Like terrible things happen in movies all the time, and we're kind of like desensitized. But this movie actually captures like how you would feel if you saw like broken glass leading into your home. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And the characters react in a way where like they're both obviously scared. Bruce Willis isn't like handling it like a badass. He's scared. He's handling it pretty well, but that's like because this is like his bread and butter basically.
Yeah.
And then of course the intruder is like this pitiable, like scary, but scary because he's so obviously at the end of his rope. Like because they could have done that differently too, right? Like that character could have been like crazy in a like a rabid way, but he's actually crazy in like a just absolutely desperate and broken way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we should give props to Donnie Wahlberg for that because he
Yeah.
lost like 40 pounds. Like this is this tiny bit role that's in 2 minutes of the movie, but he lost a ton of weight for it to make himself look so emaciated and skinny. The makeup work is excellent. Like he's got scratches all over his body. I mean, just the fact that he's in his underwear is like inherently like threat reducing, right? Like
Right.
he seems he's almost looks like a child because he's so small and vulnerable and skinny and damaged. And yeah, like it really accentuates the shock of when he just pulls out the gun and just casually shoots him.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty much all the scenes that I wanted to talk about specifically, but
I wanted to talk about the game, the mind reading game scene real quick.
Okay.
I mean, like I think we've talked about how good the camera work is in this movie. For an hour, but I loved the scene because the setup of the scene, we talked about it before, but he's like, Malcolm is in there with Cole and he's saying, I can read your mind, and for everything I get right, you're going to step closer to me, and then for everything I get wrong, you can step further away. If you get to me, you have to talk. If you get to the next room, you can leave and I'll leave you alone. And so the scene starts off really well with him getting a few things right, and Cole is getting closer and closer to him, and he's almost to the chair. He's almost there. And then he starts getting things wrong. And the thing I love about it, when he starts getting things wrong, the camera cuts to a point of view shot where we're seeing through Cole's eyes as he backs up. And so the camera pulls back. And it does this every time Cole backs up. And it's just this really specific, wonderful effect that really makes you feel the distance growing. Like you're seeing through Cole's eyes and you're seeing how much further away Bruce Willis is getting from you. Now that I'm thinking about it, like Shyamalan is doing a lot with the distance and the space between people in this movie. Like a lot. In different ways, but he really is.
yeah, and using the camera in very interesting ways to capture that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's just a wonderfully composed scene, like from beginning to end. And I just love that, like, he's willing to jump into that point of view mode. And I think he goes Cole point of view a few times in the movie.
Yeah.
And it allows us to kind of get into his head and see the world the way he is. And it's scary.
Yeah. That reminds me, there's also, since this is only now occurring to me, I can't readily think of the examples, but like there's definitely, I'm remembering the scene where they're in the church and Cole is like up on a balcony and Malcolm is down on the ground floor.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because first of all, it's one of those scenes where you're like, well, this makes a lot more sense Cole was just there playing, and then Malcolm teleports into the room. But like, I wonder if there's a meaning, like if you could watch the whole movie and see if there's some kind of consistent meaning between like people being on different levels. There's like the scene with the stairs.
Yeah.
And there's this scene, and then later later Malcolm is upstairs on the balcony with him. Then that's the last scene they have together.
Oh yeah. God, when he says to complete I forgot to talk about this, but his line there is, "I'm not going to see you anymore, am I?"
Yeah.
And it's a great way of like going full circle with the whole thing. It's like, I'm going to see you again, aren't I?
Yeah.
I'm not going to, and then that beautiful moment where he's, can we pretend like I'm going to see you tomorrow?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful moment.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great moments in this script that are made because they're a echo of something that happened earlier in the script.
Yeah.
Like you were never second place. And, and you know, what are you thinking, Mom? Look at my face. Like, there are all these things where the things that occur twice in the movie. And what's really interesting is that like that could actually be really corny. Like if you do that a bunch of times and it comes across as being on the nose, that can be really corny. Mm-hmm. And it can come off as amateurish if you're like really leaning on like it isn't objectively good to just like repeat yourself and be like, remember when I did that earlier? It works because it works, right? Like it works because he did everything else right, and also the script is really good. But it's just really interesting that there's multiple instances of this and it works so well. The script is just so good. Like that's one of the things I can't wait to talk about in the rest of these movies is so many of them. I'm just like the script is amazingly good at a dialogue level and a character level. And I feel like the people who have issues, it's like their issues are things where I'm just like, I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I'm not paying attention to that. The way I'm watching these movies is in terms of like, what are these characters feeling? Like, am I buying into these characters? Yes, I am. Who cares if like there's a bit of a like hokey thing that happens in the story?
Yeah. One of the, I think, common complaints I see about Shyamalan is like how his characters sometimes act unnatural. And I think I wonder, like, I don't agree with it, but I wonder in some of his most highly regarded movies if the reason why people are more okay with it in those movies is because it's inherently true. Like this movie, Cole doesn't act like a normal kid. Bruce Willis is not acting natural for very specific reasons. So like maybe the type of movie it is masking that a little bit. Because I'm thinking about Signs and how the children in Signs just are kind of Cole-ish in their weirdness. And it's been a while since I've seen that movie, so I might be just remembering it wrong. But his daughter specifically is acting different. And I don't know. I think I want to. That's kind of another note for us to pay attention to that as we going. Is the performances and the dialogue and the emotions and how why people might say that about him.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think you may be right, but the funny thing is, like, I am now around children constantly, including sometimes children that aren't mine. So I get like a broad sample of how children behave, and the lesson is, children are weird.
True.
And like I if anything, I feel like child actors like work better on me now because I'm just like, oh yeah, they're like, I can buy that kid just behaves that way. And that's just the way they are.
Yeah. Joaquin Phoenix is kind of weird in that movie too, though. His character's weird. I mean, I think he just kind of, Shyamalan's worlds are kind of not ours, right? Like even when it's taking place in a so-called normal world, things are always kind of slightly askew. Always.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I can't wait to talk about that movie because like
I love that movie.
Joaquin
so much.
Phoenix is such a like top of the universe actor. Like everything he's doing in that movie is crafted to capture this guy who's like the type of guy who would be into the conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And I mean, that character works great for me. But we'll talk about that.
I mean, Joaquin Phoenix, I'm going to go and say this, best actor working today. Boom. Did it.
Yeah. I mean, what year was it recently where he just did like like the two best movies of the year, and he was like the star in both of them, and they were completely different movies. So
The answer is every year.
yeah, well, yeah, right. He's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw You Were Never Really Here. You need to
No.
see that movie. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah, I
but
don't
we're
know.
getting off topic here.
Yeah, well, sort of. It's all about Shyamalan, but
True.
yeah. I mean, I guess as we go more into the marathon, we'll do the thing more where we like dip back into the previous movies we've talked
Sure.
about.
One of the things that I think this is a good thing to conclude on because it's kind of a high level thing. This movie, like you said, is about connection. It's about communication. It's about reconciliation. And I think these are things that Shyamalan deals with a lot. A lot of his characters in his movies are kind of broken characters who are trying to pick up the pieces of mistakes or a life that went wrong or have suffered from something terrible. And they are trying to find a way back to the people they care about. And I think this is something that we're going to see in Unbreakable, in Signs, in The Visit. Well, I don't know about The Visit. in definitely in The Village. I mean, that's kind of literally what that movie is about, is people getting so frustrated with the world they just say, fuck it, I'm out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in fact, I would even go a step further and say that they're almost all about loss of loved ones specifically, and people who are reeling from that and trying to like find some footing in a world that no longer makes sense to them. And the only one of those that this doesn't fit out of the next several movies would be Unbreakable, actually, because I don't think it's that he loses someone. I think he has this. Maybe you could say that like he's given up on a dream that he had.
You could say he's lost himself.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah. Man, I really enjoyed that talk. I think we managed to get through just about everything we wanted to. I really love that movie, Matt. I love that movie more every time I see it. And I think that's a sign of a twist that works, when the movie doesn't rely on the twist to be good, that you can still appreciate it just as much watching it again and again and again and again.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's the this is one of those movies. While I was watching it, I was like, I really just hope so fervently that I can get my kids through to like whatever the minimum viable age for watching this movie is before they're spoiled on it, which is going to be really hard because the culture is so full of I see dead people and you know, Bruce Willis is a ghost memes and everything. But I'm like, man, I want to give them the feeling that I had the first time that I saw this movie, and that twist hit me. And I was just, it was one of the like top 3 head exploding moments of my life. So
See, I'm jealous because I never got it.
Yeah.
I knew the ending of the movie before I watched it. I didn't see it in theater, and I forgot. Someone told me. I forgot who. I just knew. I knew sitting down already, so I missed that. So yes, I support keeping this movie clean for people. I'm not like a huge spoilers matter type of person, but I do think that this movie. I think you should try your best to experience it without any knowledge beforehand.
I usually agree. Spoilers don't matter to me a ton. But this is one where, again, it's like a different movie the first time you see it. If you don't know that that's what's going to happen, and then you know you watch it again, it's like a completely different movie. So
yeah. I saw one of someone I follow on Twitter was retweeting something that someone said is like, what movies are best going into without knowing anything about them, and he retweeted all of them.
That's I like that. Yeah.
All right. Well, we will be back not next week, but soon-ish with the next film in this list, which is Unbreakable. Bruce Willis again. Another child actor, not quite as good as Haley Joel Osment, but pretty good. And another movie that I really, really liked. I think I used to say Unbreakable was my favorite of the Shyamalan films because, like, it was kind of unloved. and I was trying to be edgy, but I really have to admit that I think Sixth Sense is my favorite of his movies. Which is, we have another director on the series that starts off real strong, Matt, and it's going to be interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I guess to set it all out on the table, I think I haven't seen Unbreakable more than once, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, that is.
But I love Signs, I love The Village, and I love even Lady in the Water, which...
I can't wait to talk about that movie.
Yeah, that's one of those ones where most people are like, what, really? Yeah, I do.
I love The Happening, and I'm going to enjoy that conversation too.
Yeah. And then I don't think I've seen I haven't seen The Last Airbender, I haven't seen After Earth. The Visit was great. I don't think I love it, but it was great. And I still haven't seen Split or Glass. So,
oh boy, it's going to be fun, Matt.
Yeah, it is.
So tune in over the next few months as we continue to go down this. We are going to be tagging this episode on our website as Deconstructing Shyamalan, so you'll be able to see all the other episodes by clicking that category tag on the website. And check out our other ones too. We just finished up with the Wachowskis. This is the first time you're listening. We've just finished up with the Wachowskis. We did 7 of their films, and that was a lot of fun too. And this is only the second director under our new format, but we've done a bunch of directors with this, so it's all under the Deconstructing Director series.
Yeah, we always learn a lot. We always figure things out that we wouldn't have figured out if we didn't really, really dig into it like this.
Absolutely. All right, guys, that's all we had for you this week. If you want to let us know about M. Night Shyamalan or your opinion on Signs or any of his movies, or just want to say hey, you can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on our Twitter account at doofmedia, which you should follow anyway if you want to see when new episodes of everything come out. If we have any schedule changes, if we have any questions for you guys, that's the place to go to find it. So follow us on Twitter. It'll be good.
Yeah, it's worth it. And if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found. And
this and all the shows we do are always found over at our website, doofmedia.com. You can check out Vow to View. We've got Ward. Deep Impact. We've got a thing for 3-name shows, man. 3-word shows.
That's true.
You can check all those shows out and everything else over at doofmedia.com. Our book club is another great thing to find there. That'll be happening next week. It's coming up. I got to read that book. Anyway, if you want to support us, you can become a patron of Doof Media. You can head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and donate $1 a month or whatever else you can afford. All your donation money goes towards putting the show on, supporting all the stuff on the back end, and allows us to keep growing, keep doing new things, keep experimenting with new types of content. So we really appreciate those of you that take the time to donate to us. It helps enormously, and there is a lot of cool features and things you get for doing it. So head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and check all that out.
Yeah, and also please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, guys, we will see you all next week for another exciting episode of the Doofcast. Just remember, when you feel the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, that's them.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.